The harsh blue light from your smartphone cuts through the dark room, illuminating the fingerprints smeared across the glass. A single vibration rattles the wood of the nightstand. You glance down. The screen displays a generic notification, a few casual words that immediately drop the temperature in your chest by 10 degrees. Just checking in. Or perhaps, happy holidays. It is from the exact person who spent months systematically dismantling your self-esteem, brick by brick. Your jaw locks, acid pools in the pit of your stomach. The ghost of every manipulation, every calculated betrayal, every sleepless night comes rushing back, heavy and suffocating. In this exact microsecond, society whispers its favorite lie into your ear. Be the bigger person. Show grace, forgive, and let go. The weak version of you feels the crushing weight of that expectation. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard, drafting a polite, sterile response just to neutralize the threat. You convince yourself that typing "thanks you too" is a sign of maturity. In reality, you are terrified. You want to avoid the agonizing guilt of being mean. You are willing to trade your psychological safety to avoid their momentary discomfort. But the ruthless version of you does not type. You look at the glowing pixels. You feel the pulse of cold, undeniable memory running through your veins. Your finger touches the screen, drags the notification to the left, and hits delete without breaking stride. You set the phone face down. The room stays quiet. Let us expose the mechanism right now. The concept of being the bigger person is a psychological scam. It is an insidious social construct designed for one specific purpose: to prioritize the comfort of the collective over the safety of the individual. When the herd sees conflict, the herd feels anxiety. The people around you do not care about your internal bleeding. They only care about smoothing over the visible tension. They demand that you swallow your boundaries so the group dynamic can stop feeling awkward. When you force yourself to extend an olive branch before your wounds have scarred over, you are not displaying spiritual superiority. You are committing emotional treason against yourself. You are teaching your own nervous system that its alarm bells are meaningless. Every time you smile and say that everything is fine when your knuckles are still white from the betrayal, you abandon your own defense perimeter. You hand over the keys to the fortress just to prove how civilized you are. You think that sending that forgiving text will bring you closure. You imagine a heavy weight lifting off your shoulders. No, it will not. The sudden relief you experience after hitting send is not healing. It is just the temporary high of submitting to social pressure. It is the chemical rush of avoiding confrontation. Tomorrow morning, you will wake up, stare at the ceiling, and the rot will return. The resentment will burn twice as hot because now you have betrayed yourself too. Why does this happen? Because forced forgiveness was never designed to heal you. It was designed to protect them. It is a calculated mechanism to absolve the guilty without requiring them to pay the toll. Let us look at the dark mechanics of social control in the next lesson. The hiss of an espresso machine cuts through the chaotic hum of voices. You are sitting at a small, wobbly table in a crowded coffee shop, tracing the condensation ring left by a glass of ice water you have not touched. Across from you sits the mutual friend, the self-appointed mediator. They lean forward, resting their forearms on the sticky wood. They tilt their head to that precise, mathematically calculated angle of manufactured sympathy. They look you dead in the eye and deliver the script they were programmed to recite. You really need to let this go. Holding on to grudges is like drinking poison. Pay attention to what happens in your body the exact microsecond those words hit the air. The back of your neck prickles. A sudden, sharp nausea twists your stomach. Your jaw clenches so hard your molars grind together, even though your expression remains perfectly blank. This physical revulsion is not a sign of spiritual immaturity. It is your nervous system recognizing a predator in the room. We call this invisible mechanism burden shifting. It is a masterpiece of dark psychology that happens right in front of your face. When someone violates your boundaries, they create a deficit. They hold the absolute liability for their actions, but unresolved conflict leaves a hanging debt in the social atmosphere. Enter the mediator, equipped with a psychological sleight of hand. They cannot erase the perpetrator's original crime, therefore they must criminalize your reaction to that crime. Watch the magic trick unfold. By demanding that you forgive and forget, The mediator takes the heavy, ugly responsibility of the abuse and places it squarely onto your shoulders. Suddenly, the perpetrator is no longer the villain for hurting you. You are the villain for refusing to heal on an accelerated schedule. If you do not smile and accept the hollow apology, you become the problem. You are bitter. You are stuck in the past. You are ruining the peace. The liability has been successfully transferred. The weak version of you shrinks under that sympathetic gaze. You nod slowly. You stare down at your wet napkin and mumble that you are trying to move on, absorbing the guilt for an offense you did not commit. You swallow the insult to make the mediator comfortable. The ruthless version of you recognizes this mediation for exactly what it is. The mutual friend is not offering a cure. They are handing you a broom and demanding that you sweep the shattered glass under the rug, simply so they do not cut their feet the next time they walk through the room. They want the illusion of a clean floor, purchased entirely with your silent suffering. A stoic truth cuts through the noise of this coffee shop. He who demands your forgiveness without facing consequences does not seek peace, he seeks permission. By forgiving an unpaid debt, you are not closing a chapter. You are issuing a license to repeat the offense. You are looking at someone who burned your house down, handing them a fresh box of matches and apologizing for the smoke. You have been programmed to believe that holding onto your anger is toxic, that it is eating you alive from the inside. This is the most dangerous lie in modern psychology, because your anger is not poison. In the next lesson, you will discover what your anger actually is and why turning it off will destroy you. You're flat on your back, staring at the ceiling fan shadows cast by the street lamp outside. Your jaw is locked so tightly, the muscle near your temple throbs. Beneath your ribs, your heart is executing a violent, irregular rhythm against your mattress. You are replaying the exact moment the disrespect happened. The smirk, the condescending tone, the way they walked away while you stood there in silence. The modern gurus and wellness influencers have programmed the weak version of you for exactly this moment. They whisper through your screen, telling you to breathe through the discomfort, to send love and light to the person who humiliated you, to let it go because anger is a low vibration. So you force your fingers to uncurl from the bedsheets. You swallow the metallic burning sensation at the back of your throat. You actively try to manufacture a feeling of peace that does not exist. This is not spiritual enlightenment. This is psychological self-mutilation. Listen to the heavy thud of your own pulse right now. That physiological reaction is not a toxic defect. That is your biological alarm system shrieking. Anger is the immune system of the soul. It does not exist to poison you. It evolved to protect your territory. When a foreign virus enters your bloodstream, your body does not forgive the pathogen. It generates a fever. It raises your internal temperature to a hostile, unlivable extreme to burn the threat out. Anger is the psychological fever responding to a boundary violation. It is the raw fuel required to incinerate threats to your dignity. Think about the physical reality. If someone drags a rusted blade across your arm, you do not sit in a circle and forgive the knife. You apply intense pressure, disinfect the wound with burning alcohol, and stitch the flesh back together. Your biological imperative is survival, not absolution. Yet, when you forcefully suppress your natural rage to perform the theatrics of fake forgiveness, you hijack this exact survival mechanism. You instruct your mind to shut off the fire alarm while the living room is engulfed in flames. When you silence the alarm, the energy of that anger does not vanish. It metastasizes. It turns inward. This is how you create an autoimmune disease of the soul. Because your subconscious knows the predator is still in the room, but you have explicitly forbidden it from attacking the threat. So, it begins attacking your own self-worth. You start waking up exhausted. You doubt your own memories. You shrink in rooms you used to own. You did this to yourself the moment you classified your own defense mechanism as a sin. The ruthless version of you stops fighting the fever. You lie in the dark, you feel the radiating heat in your chest, and you finally let it burn. You stop trying to heal the person who cut you, and you start letting the anger fortify your walls. The muscle tension in your shoulders is no longer panic. It is preparation. You accept that you were wronged, and you refuse to absolve the debt. The breathing naturally slows down, the heart rate stabilizes, not because you forgave them, but because your nervous system finally trusts you to defend it. You have finally stopped suppressing the fire. You have drawn the line in the sand. But what happens if the silence breaks? What happens if they come back, desperate, weeping, offering the exact apology you always wanted, and you break down and grant them that forgiveness? You think you are finally closing the chapter. They see something entirely different. In the next part, we dissect the predator's calculus. And what goes through their mind the second you say those words will make your blood run absolutely cold. They are standing in your hallway. The bouquet of white roses and eucalyptus, wrapped in damp brown paper, is crushed against their chest. Their breathing is ragged, catching in their throat. The tears are real. They are hot, wet, and streaking down a face that suddenly looks incredibly small and defeated. They look you directly in the eyes and deliver the exact script you have been starving to hear for months. They say they understand the pain they caused. They swear they will never do it again. The tight, throbbing knot beneath your ribs suddenly dissolves. The exhaustion of constantly defending yourself washes over you, heavy and numbing. You drop your gaze to the floorboards. You exhale a breath you have been holding for weeks. And you say the words that seal your fate. You say you forgive them. You believe you have just signed a peace treaty. You believe this mutual vulnerability is the foundation of a cleansed slate. Now, step behind the glass. Look at the manipulator's brain through a cold clinical lens. The moment those words leave your mouth, they are not experiencing a spiritual awakening. They are not feeling the profound weight of your mercy. They are processing data. To a psychological predator, your forgiveness is a mechanical reset button. It is a vital piece of intelligence gathering. By granting them absolution without extracting a brutal, uncompromising consequence, you are engaging in pure operant conditioning. You are not teaching them the value of grace. You are establishing the exact mathematical exchange rate for your dignity. Their internal ledger updates instantly. They now know the precise market value of your boundaries, your sleepless nights, your shattered peace, and your fractured self, worth all cost exactly one theatrical breakdown, 30 minutes of active listening, and a handful of dying flowers. The immediate aftermath is intoxicating. For 7 days, your reality is absolute paradise. They answer your messages instantly. They lower their voice. They anticipate your needs before you even speak them. You sink into the couch, totally unarmored, convinced that the fever finally burned the sickness out. Then, the calendar flips to day 8. The disrespect returns. But pay very close attention to the behavior. It is not the exact same offense. It is mathematically calibrated. The dismissal, the subtle mockery, the silent treatment is exactly 10% worse than last time. A predator does not look at your forgiveness and see moral superiority. They look at your forgiveness and see a glaring structural vulnerability in your defense grid. You prove that no matter how deep they cut, the reset button is always functional. They just have to perform the correct sequence of remorse to press it. You train them that your walls are an illusion, easily dismantled by the right amount of manufactured guilt. The ruthless version of you watches the tears fall in that hallway and feels absolutely nothing. The pulse remains flat. The jaw stays locked. You look at the damp flowers, you look at their weeping eyes, and you recognize the performance not as an apology, but as a hostile transaction. You refuse the trade. You understand that closing the distance now only guarantees that the next strike will land much closer to the bone. But if forgiveness is a lethal trap, if your anger is just a biological alarm bell, and if giving them grace only trains them to hit you harder next time, how do you actually move on? How do you sever the cord and get closure when the apology means absolutely nothing? The answer is not love, and the answer is not hate. The answer is the most terrifying emotional state of all, total freezing indifference. You step out of a crowded bakery, adjusting the cardboard sleeve on your hot cup. The midday sun is glaring harshly off the windshields of crawling traffic. You glance across the street, past a parked delivery van, and there they are, standing on the opposite sidewalk, entirely unaware of your presence. The weak version of you instantly floods with cortisol. Your throat tightens, swallowing becoming a conscious, abrasive effort. The primitive circuits in your brain scream for immediate action. One impulse begs you to dart across 4 lanes of traffic, march right up to them, and unload every ounce of venom you have been harboring. The other impulse commands you to shrink back, to duck behind a newspaper stand, desperately praying they do not turn their head and catch your eye. Both reactions require massive amounts of energetic funding. Both reactions confirm that this person still holds the master key to your biological responses. Now watch the ruthless version of you. The emotional temperature within your chest drops to absolute 0. You spot them waiting at the crosswalk, and your pulse remains exactly where it was 10 seconds ago. You do not clutch your cup tighter. You do not hold your breath. You look at the person who tore your life apart with the exact same baseline of apathy that you reserve for a cracked paving stone or a broken plastic chair abandoned on the curb. Acknowledged, bypassed, forgotten. Society insists that you must forgive a predator to heal. That is a dangerous fairy tale. You do not need to offer absolution. You only need to enforce neutralization. The opposite of love has never been hate. Hate is an incredibly expensive emotion. It forces you to burn thousands of psychological calories, keeping their ghost alive and well in your head. The opposite of love is irrelevance. You look right through them, not out of bitterness, but out of supreme psychological economy. You have officially closed their account. There is no anger left to spend, no grief left to process, and no revenge left to plot. You take a sip of your drink, step off the curb, and walk past them without altering a single beat of your stride. They are dead to you. You have achieved zero state. You cut the cord. You finally unplugged from their game. But the matrix abhors a power vacuum. The exact moment you completely withdraw your energetic funding, an invisible alarm trips. Within 72 hours of your absolute withdrawal, the real test begins. The predator will feel the sudden terrifying absence of your attention, and the system will send external agents to break your silence. If you crack here, you lose everything. The screen lights up on your mattress, casting a harsh, sterile glare against the ceiling. You recognize the name instantly. It is not the person who broke you. It is your mother, or perhaps that mutual friend who always plays the smiling diplomat. The system is actively dispatching its agents. The phone vibrates against the fabric, a relentless mechanical hum demanding your submission. The weak version of you answers with a tight, aching throat, instantly preparing a defense. You hear the tired, rehearsed platitudes bleeding through the speaker. Life is too short. You are tearing everybody apart. Can you not just be the bigger person for my sake? In the past, you would have bitten the hook. You would have paced the length of your living room, your voice cracking, dragging out the bloody autopsy of your trauma for the 100th time just to prove you had a right to be damaged. You exhausted your nervous system trying to make a bystander understand the sheer geometry of your pain. Understand the invisible mechanism at play here. This person does not care about your healing. They do not lose a single second of sleep over your crushed boundaries. They care entirely about their own atmospheric comfort. Your sudden withdrawal, your absolute freezing out of the abuser, has created friction at their dinner tables and ruined the polite synthetic harmony of their social circle. They are uncomfortable, and to cure that discomfort, they are asking you to set yourself on fire just to keep their room warm. This is the ultimate guilt trip of the enabler. Now, watch the ruthless version of you handle the peacemaker interrogation. You swipe the glass to accept the call. You lean back against the headboard, staring blankly at the wall. You let them deliver their entire emotional monologue. You do not interrupt. You do not agree. When they finally stop to draw a breath, expecting your usual frantic justification, you deliver verbal judo. You speak in a low, completely flat cadence. My decision is final, and it is not open for debate. Then, you stop talking. You do not offer a single fractured word of explanation. You do not soften the blow with an apology. You let the dead air stretch over the line. 10 seconds, 15. You listen to the suffocating heavy void until they literally choke on the awkwardness. They stammer. They frantically try to patch the vacuum with nervous sighs, but you give them absolutely nothing to grip. You just cut off the oxygen supply to their manipulation. The click of the ending call echoes in the quiet room. You have done the impossible. You neutralize the predator by withdrawing your funding. You silence the enablers and watch them scramble in the dark. The external noise has been completely eradicated, but there is still one final door to walk through, the ultimate shift from a survivor who refuses to forgive to a master who dictates the very fabric of their own reality. The cold porcelain of the sink presses against your palms. You look up. The bathroom mirror reflects a face that finally looks rested. No incoming calls vibrating on the counter. No notifications bleeding blue light into the quiet room. It is completely, absolutely silent. You take a breath, and for the first time in what feels like a decade, the oxygen actually hits the very bottom of your lungs. The phantom weight, that suffocating pressure you used to carry behind your sternum into every interaction, has evaporated. Your shoulders drop a full inch. You're not bracing for an attack. You are not mentally drafting a desperate defense. You are simply existing in your own sovereign space. This is the final psychological shift. Society programmed you with a paralyzing myth. They sold you the idea that closure is a transactional bridge requiring two participants to build. They claimed you cannot move forward until the person who broke you hands over a genuine apology and you hand back a virtuous pardon. That is a lie. It is a fabricated narrative designed to keep you chained to the waiting room of your own life, holding your breath for a predator to suddenly develop a conscience. When you buy into that myth, you leave your healing in the hands of the very architect of your destruction. You give them veto power over your future. Every time you waited for them to understand your pain, you silently communicated that your reality was not valid until they approved it. Look at your reflection in the glass. The ruthless version of you understands a magnificent, brutal truth. You hold the pen. You do not need their remorse to validate your history. You do not need them to finally sit down and comprehend the sheer scale of the damage they caused. Their understanding is entirely irrelevant to your recovery. You turn on the faucet. The water runs over your wrists, cold and grounding. You watch it circle the drain, and a realization settles permanently into your bones. You did not forgive the unforgivable. You did not contort your boundaries to accommodate their sickness or swallow your anger to manufacture fake peace. Instead, you achieved the highest form of psychological dominance. You simply outgrew the need for their existence in your timeline. You took back the master keys to your own nervous system. They are no longer a villain you have to conquer, nor a ghost you have to appease. They have been stripped of all rank, reduced to an irrelevant footnote in a history you no longer read. If you have felt the weight lift, if you are ready to drop the burden of fake forgiveness and step into cold, sovereign control, type "I am the author" in the comments. Then, click the video on screen to learn the 5 laws of Machiavellian boundary setting. Stay ruthless.